So Chris Packham's been in the news a lot lately for obvious reasons amongst the shooting community regarding the general licence and that sort of general debacle that's being sorted out as we speak. But this isn't the only activism he's been involved in. He's been very much out there promoting banning fox hunting and the badger cull and veganism and even food labelling for non-vegan food. He actually wanted a government health warning on meat, a little like you'd get on cigarettes, which frankly is quite an extremist position, a strong imposition of your views onto other people. Now, he's got the right to do that if it wasn't for the fact that he works for the BBC. Now, sure, when he's on Springwatch, he isn't particularly spouting these views, although, of course, Springwatch is very much a London suburbanite, towny point of view of the countryside. But nonetheless, yeah, sure, he doesn't do that. But he does work for them. And whilst you're working for the BBC, you should not be an activist. That is a strong conflict of interest. We have our money extorted from us from the BBC to pay for the licence fee in exactly the same way as any other tax. So they are accountable to us. Yet, for some reason, when this is brought up, they just tell us, oh no, Chris Packham doesn't work for us. He's not employed by us. He's just a contractor. Well, that's very convenient, isn't it? When you consider that everybody who works for the BBC is a contractor, save for maybe the cleaner. But I digress. Here he is at a anti-fox hunting rally. Let's hear what he's got to say for himself.
Now, fox hunting. Today is the start of the Premiership football season. That is sport. Killing animals for pleasure is not sport. It's something which is no longer acceptable in our countryside to 84% of the people in the UK. We are secure here today in our wishes because we are backed by a democratic majority of people. We know we will win this argument. We have 84% of the UK population behind us. It's only a matter of time.
Now, to start with, you'll have to bear with me because this brings up a particular linguistic bugbear of mine. So, yeah, bear with me. But sport is not a noun. It's an adjective. A game of football is a game. That's the name of it. It's a game. It's not a sport. Because if that was the case, we wouldn't talk about giving something a sporting chance or being a good sport, would we? It's a descriptive word. So say you were playing a game of football and you were like 2-0 down and you came back in the last minute and you got 3 goals and you won the game, and the other guy on the other side of the other team shook your hand and he was really good about it, you would say he was really sporting. Or you might say, oh God, we had some great sport today, didn't we? So that's not the description of the word. That's not what it means. And the reason why hunting is referred to as sporting is because it is sporting. Because the animal has a chance. Hence the reason why with fox hunting, it's a cull. So you're taking the weakest animals. Most of the time with fox hunting, the animal gets away. So you take the weakest. So those stronger animals have a sporting chance. They're competing with each other in a sporting activity. So, no, sorry Chris, football is not a bloody sport. And when he starts talking about having the majority of people agreeing with him, and he's like saying it's only a matter of time, that's quite ominous. That sounds like something, and I really don't like using this expression, and I'm not calling him a Nazi, but it does sound the sort of thing that Hitler would have said, you know? It wasn't so good for the Jews, was it? I dread to think what he would do to us if he had the opportunity.
That fox hunting has a purpose because it controls vermin in the countryside.
Let's hunt the Tories in!
Since 1995, BTO, British Trust for Ornithology, peer-reviewed science, says that our fox population has declined by 34%. How is that? helping our countryside? How is persecuting an animal which is currently in decline and plays an essential ecological role in our countryside conservation? It's not. It's just an excuse for gratuitous killing.
Now, first of all, I would always take with a pinch of salt any reference from anybody about raises and declines in population, only because they're taken from samples. It's a bit like talking about viewing figures on terrestrial television. You don't really know. I mean, with terrestrial television, at least advertisers can look at the feedback they've had and see what they got. But otherwise, if you take like 2,000 people out of the UK and record what they watched, that doesn't really give you a genuine reflection of the entire country. And so, and equally, if you do a catch and release tagging system, which is what they do when they're trying to estimate populations of wild species, you only really know what the population is in that particular area that you're in. Now, obviously, the trouble with foxes, like all other animals, is that they don't spread out evenly across the entirety of the United Kingdom. So you don't really know. But if we accept that and we say, yeah, okay, fox numbers have declined by, what he said, 34% over the last so many years, don't you think that might be because we've banned fox hunting? And now, as you can see in my stock footage, we're shooting them. Shooting them is non-specific. I try and be very, very careful when I shoot them. That's why I shoot in the daytime. I get to know these animals and I learn where they are and I see which ones are the most bold and which ones are coming out during the day and what their habits are, and I stalk them and I shoot them. But most people don't do it that way because it's not really convenient. It's much easier to go out with a lamp and just shoot them indiscriminately. Which the problem with that is, of course, is you're not naturally selecting them. In some ways, you're not being sporting. Getting back onto that theme again. But you're not. You're not being sporting. You're just calling them in and you're shooting them. So consequently, you're being much more efficient. You're shooting a lot more of them. So if fox numbers have declined over several years, that's because of people like you, Chris.
They sometimes say, it's a tradition. Slavery was a tradition. Racism was a tradition. Homophobia was a tradition. We haven't quite got rid of all of them, but we are justifiably trying to get rid of these abhorrent, out-of-date ideas. The idea that in the 21st century it's appropriate to charge around the countryside tearing animals to pieces with dogs is wrong.
And here we have the root of the problem. Chris Packham sees animals as if they are human beings. So despite him understanding conservation, or at least he should understand conservation, he should know that, for instance, if we don't shoot foxes, that they become overpopulated because they have no natural predators. They'll become diseased and unwell because they will be living unnaturally. Because naturally, they would be rebalanced. The ecosystem would balance itself. But we don't have that. He stood on a city street, surrounded by buildings that would need to be wilderness for that to work. He knows this, but he doesn't care. It's like a form of cognitive dissonance. On one hand, he says he cares about conservation, but on the other hand, he sees animals as people. And so he wants to preserve rather than conserve them. It's actually an almost religious fundamentalist mindset that we're dealing with here, an extremist mindset. You will never convince him, ever, or anybody who follows him. So I really don't know what the answer is.